Hi everybody, and welcome to our Maundy Thursday daily devotion. Now before we get into the devotional part of this video, let me just explain where the word Maundy comes from, because it's perhaps a word that we know and use but don't really know what it means or where it comes from. Now in John's Gospel we learn that when Jesus gathered his disciples in the upper room, he washed their feet. And having washed their feet, he says these words, "A new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you." Now, based upon that act of washing their feet and then those words about a new commandment to love one another, many Christians around the world actually wash each other's feet on this day as part of their Easter celebration. Now, in the Latin Bible, the Vulgate, that verse that says, "A new commandment I give to you," begins with these words, "Mandatum novum," a new commandment. Mandatum means commandment, and that's where the word Maundy comes from. This is the commandment Thursday, the command to love one another as demonstrated in foot washing. Now we are practicing social distancing at this time, so there'll be no church-wide foot washing ceremony, but if you are living with others, then you're very welcome to do that should you so wish for those in your home. Now Luke doesn't record the foot washing, but he does record lots of other things, and our reading today is Luke 22, 7 to 65. Now, if you haven't done that reading, can I suggest that you pause this video and do that reading, Luke 22, 7 to 65. You'll see that there's a whole load of things that happen. Jesus gathers his disciples around that table, he teaches them, he predicts the betrayal by Judas and the denial by Peter. We see Peter's denial, we see the arrest of Jesus, and we see him mocked. Now, there's a lot of things that kind of impacted me as I read these verses, but there's one thing that struck me in particular, and that is how clearly we see both Jesus' divinity and his humanity in this text, that he's both God and man. Now, we thought about the fact that Jesus claims to be God in our Tuesday devotion, and here we see so clearly that he is who he claimed to be. Let's think first of all about that divinity. One of the things that shines through in this text is that Jesus is in complete control of this situation. And indeed, that's true of the whole Easter narrative. Nothing happens against the will of Jesus. He's walking into Jerusalem knowing what awaits him. And along every step of this journey, he is in control. And we see this in his foreknowledge. Jesus knows what's next. Every step, he knows what's going to happen. So even though people are doing things against him, this is all part of the plan, and Jesus knows it. Let's just think about that foreknowledge for a moment. We see that even at the beginning of the story. Jesus tells two of his disciples, Peter and John, "I want you to go into the city, and when you go there, you'll see a man carrying a jug of water. Follow him to the house that he goes to. And when you get there, say to the owner, the master wants to have his Passover celebration here. And he'll tell you about a upper room that's already furnished." And sure enough, everything is as Jesus said. And we see it, the foreknowledge of Jesus, also in the fact that he predicts the betrayal by Judas. Now that betrayal was done in secret, it was done in the dark, and all the plans to kill Jesus were done behind his back. So none of the disciples knew about it. But Jesus knew. Because he was divine, Jesus knew. And a similar thing with Peter. Peter feels like he's very dedicated to Jesus, but Jesus tells him, "You will deny me." Peter says, "No way," but Jesus knew. And then we find Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he's praying to God. He's praying, "Father, if there's another way, let there be another way, yet not my will but yours." Why does he pray that? Because he knows what's about to happen. The cross is about to happen. Jesus knows that the cross is what awaits him. He knows because he's God. He's divine. We see the foreknowledge of Jesus so clearly in these verses. And yet we also see his humanity. Think about that scene I just mentioned, the Garden of Gethsemane. He's praying, "Father, if there's another way, let it be so." Why does he pray that? Well, he prays that because as a human being, he doesn't want to endure the cross. He is willing to go, which is why he says, "Father, not my will but yours," but he doesn't look forward to it. Why? Because he's human. No human being would want to suffer the agony of the cross. You may have watched a movie like Jesus of Nazareth, or even more, The Passion of the Christ, and seen how horrific the suffering was. Jesus, the Son of God, endured that as a man like us. He was one of us, and that suffering he endured was excruciating. So he suffers as a man. So we see in this text that Jesus is both man and God. And there's just one verse that I want to draw our attention to as I close, which brings this together, which is verse 15. Let me read verse 15 to you. It says this: I have eagerly desired to eat with you before I suffer. I have eagerly desired to eat with you before I suffer. We see there Jesus as this God-man. He knows he's about to suffer because he's God, and he suffers as a man. So you've got that divine human combination there in this text. But what does he say? I eagerly desire to eat with you and to celebrate Passover with you. He's just about to go to a cross, and yet what does he want to do? He wants to be with those that he loves. He wants to be with his disciples. Doesn't that show so much about the heart of this God-man, that he wants to commune, to have table fellowship with those disciples? You see, it wasn't so much the food that he looked forward to, it was being with them, because Jesus loves people. And of course, the cross that he would go to that very next day, he went there willingly, even though it was at great cost to himself. Why? Because he wants fellowship with us. The salvation that he purchased through his cross and through his triumph in the resurrection was a purchase that enables us to have fellowship with God if we put our trust in Jesus. And the hope for all who trust in Jesus is that we will be able to enjoy table fellowship with him forever in that great banqueting table in heaven. He eagerly desires to eat with us. That is the heart of Jesus. That is the good news of the gospel. I hope you have a blessed day. Take care. Bye-bye.